Good morning. Welcome back into Wake Up America. The New York Post indicating yesterday that a White House rep cannot at this time rule out Hunter Biden as the source of the cocaine found in the West Wing on Sunday, as the plot continues to thicken and the Secret Service continues to run this investigation. Joining us now for more, former Secret Service Special Agent, Newsmax contributor Charles Marino, Politico White House reporter Daniel Lippman back with us, and senior law enforcement analyst Mark Morgan with us this morning as well. Great to have you all back. Charles, we'll start with you. You were with the Secret Service for 20 years. The White House said emphatically on Wednesday that everyone left for Camp David on Friday and then returned to the White House on Tuesday. Do you believe the White House?
Well, I'll tell you, this is a huge problem, and it's also a big problem for the Secret Service, Rob. I mean, let's face it. Who wants Karine Jean-Pierre speaking on their behalf? This is a mess, in part because she's the chief spokesperson for the White House. Everything that comes out of her mouth does not make sense or is contradictory. And here's another important example where they cannot even confirm who was in the residence of the White House. Look, Camp David is not that far from Washington, D.C. It is entirely possible that somebody got in a car and came back to the White House during the course of that weekend. And if that's the case, and if it's the case that Hunter was the one that came back to the White House, then guess what? Then that changes the scope of the investigation, doesn't it?
Charles, just a quick follow-up. I understand that we've got to be somewhat vague because we don't know the facts. But on Wednesday, Karine Jean-Pierre, and this stuck out to me, she was very careful to indicate that the president and the first lady left for the White House on Friday and returned on Tuesday. She didn't include other names specifically, like Hunter Biden, for example. What do you read into that?
No, it's exactly right. Everything that comes out of their mouths, for the most part, unless they screw it up, is strategic. And they're being extremely careful and strategic in this approach about how they talk about who is around and who is not. Sometimes being exclusively very specific about who was there and who wasn't gives them some type of cover so they can come back and look at the press and say, well, look, we were telling you the truth. We told you that the president and the first lady wasn't here. However, they omit everything else that might be very important to the investigation here.
Yeah. Do you think, Charles, that somebody went back to the White House? Do you think Hunter Biden might have returned to the White House at some point over that 4-day period?
Well, look, like I said, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
You're talking about two locations that are fairly close. If somebody has a change of mind,
right,
they can come back to the White House. And the other thing, too, Rob, is it is possible that the location we're talking about, the lower West Wing entrance where this substance was found, could have been used that weekend as a drop-off location for family members and other VIPs, because the South grounds would have had equipment on it for the upcoming 4th of July fireworks show.
Good point. Daniel, you broke the news for Politico on Wednesday that the White House basically indicated that it'll be unlikely that they'll figure out who left the cocaine at the White House. What do you make of where we are now on Friday morning? A lot's changed.
So they're trying to wrap up the investigation by Monday, but I think that probably just means doing all of the those fingerprint checks, any DNA that was on that baggie, looking at the surveillance cameras. But we haven't seen, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't seen interviews or lie detector tests of White House staffers. They would probably rebel at such a thing, being, they don't want to be accused of bringing cocaine into the White House.
Right.
But that's pretty early timeline to finish the investigation. And so I'm going to be watching on Monday to see if they roll out a suspect or what the next stage is, or there's going to be a second investigation, because my story said on Wednesday that law enforcement did not think that they could find it, given that there was a lot of people who had access to that area.
Yeah, they deliberately wanted to lower expectations. Mark, let's just say, and we're in speculative territory here, but let's say the Secret Service determines that, yes, Hunter returned to the White House at some point over the weekend, and yes, he was responsible for that dime-sized or quarter-sized bag of cocaine that was found. Do you think they would ever tell us? Would they make that public?
No, I don't think so. Look, Charles is spot on. Charles was in the Secret Service, Rob. I spent 20 years in the FBI. these two agencies are the best in the world at what they do. On a regular basis, they solve and investigate sophisticated, complex investigations, sometimes intercontinental investigations. To think that they cannot solve this issue, this is a controlled access. Part of the leaks that you're seeing right now that Daniel talked about, these are intentional to already set the stage, Rob, as you said, the narrative, that this is going to be so hard. They talked about heavily trafficked area. Look, I've been there. I know Charles has been there. This is not Walmart the day after Thanksgiving traffic. This is a controlled access. They know everybody that comes in the White House grounds. The Secret Service and the FBI, they can solve this. But to Daniel's point, Rob, so are they going to allow the Secret Service to do their job? Are they going to allow, if the vice president went in through that access, if the DHS secretary went in, are they going to allow the Secret Service to interview those individuals? Because that's what's going to need to happen to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, and I think the Secret Service values their reputation. I wouldn't be surprised if whatever did happen, whoever is the source, if it doesn't go through conventional Daniel Lippman-esque Politico channels, I bet we find out via leaks, which happens all the time in Washington. We'll leave it there. Charles Marino, Daniel Lippman, Mark Morgan, appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Thank you.